Hey everybody, I am doing part two of my survival story. I actually wanted to start off with a poem that I had wrote. It's not in my book because of yesterday. It's actually on my blog, which is grishachastain.com, where you can find other blogs that I've written. This particular blog that I wrote is important to me because one, it reminded me of someone as well as reminded me of myself. So it kind of reminded me of women that basically have gone through some type of hurt, some type of pain. So I was wanted to start it off by reading it. It is entitled Who. I fell in love with a woman with broken pieces, unable to replace what was stolen and never returned. Now I stand here patiently waiting for something that may never happen. Who hurt you, I question. Who turned your heart into a battlefield, protecting yourself from anyone that comes near? Who decided to falsely love you and damage the idea of what love is meant to be? Because love isn't meant to hurt. It isn't meant to have walls, nor should you have to fear it. So who pushed you in a pool of anger, regrets, and negative emotions? Who stole away my chance to love you before I had a chance to meet you? Who forced me to fight harder for a woman who believes she isn't worth loving? Who's going to save me when I dive in to save her? The meaning behind that poem was a lot of times we don't know how to love ourselves. And then we get in relationships with other people who are wanting to love us. But because we haven't taken time to learn to love ourselves or even heal from our past, we almost set the other person up too for failure because they're trying to save us now from ourselves. So that was kind of the meaning behind writing that. And there's a song also that I put with that um, writing that I wrote, but you can find it on my grishachastain.com page. So, part two of my story. In part one, I talked about how my first experience of abuse was child sexual abuse. The second part, in a sense, was I got married at a young age, and this was the first time I experienced domestic violence abuse. And a lot of times people say they don't understand how a person can get caught up in that type of relationship because if it was them, they would leave. I know because I was that person too until I was in the domestic violence relationship. And the crazy part is, I didn't even realize I was in a domestic violence relationship until I left. It wasn't until I left that I had to look back and be like, that was domestic violence, you know, because it started out slow. Of course, they showered me with attention and affection, all the stuff that you crave and you want in a relationship. And then the mental abuse started happening, where they started becoming, I don't know if you want to say overprotective, but the jealousy as who I could talk to, who I couldn't talk to, what I could wear, what I couldn't wear, even where I could work. Because I even tried to get a job for myself in work, but they felt like with me working, that was going to be drawing more attention to me. So I ended up quitting. I stayed at home and I allowed this person to become my everything, my friend, my family. You know, this person even started thinking for me. I lost myself and I didn't even realize that I lost myself. And so that's usually how it starts, is the mental abuse. So it doesn't happen just physically. You have those cases where it does just come off physical. But in a lot of cases, it just starts off mentally. And that's how a person tends to get trapped into a domestic violence relationship. Because once they mentally have broken you down, then the physical starts. And for me, it was the slow physical stuff. It was the push here and there to see what they can get away with until bigger stuff started happening. And what I suffered with my PTSD was I got strangled a lot. So I didn't like people even near my neck because it brought back memories that I experienced because this person they strangled me a lot of times. They also cracked my leg, a lot of ligaments in my leg, to the point I had to go to the emergency room. And in the emergency room, when they ask you, do you feel safe at home? You know, that's one of the hardest questions to answer sometimes because everything in you wants to say, no, I don't feel safe. Can you save me? But you don't know what other problems that can come with if you do say yes. I need help. So you tell the person that you do feel safe because that's what I did. When they questioned me again, how did this happen? You know, I had to hurry up and think of how it happened. You know, for me, I said that I was doing laundry and fell on the steps, which I don't think the nurse believed, but because that's what I said, she had to believe that. This relationship or that relationship lasted for about 4 to 5 years on and off of abuse. I tried to leave numerous times. The two main times that I did try to attempt to leave, I left and ended up in a homeless shelter. And a lot of times people don't even realize sometimes these homeless shelters are scary. You know, for me, when I was in the homeless shelter, I laid there and I had both of my kids. And I felt scared. I felt lonely. You know, I felt helpless. Like I couldn't even do anything for my kids, let alone I couldn't even do anything for myself. So I ended up going back. You know, people go back for many reasons. And a lot of times when you do have kids, you try to stay, you try to make it work because of your kids. You know, for me, I didn't grow up in a two-parent household. So the idea of my kids growing up in a two-parent household was important for me. I wanted them to have that family life until I had to realize what good is having that family life when you're not even teaching your kids how to be a family. So that's when I knew I had to go. Sometimes it's that breaking point that you realize you have to go. And when I left, it was hard. There was moments that I wanted to go back because a lot of times you feel like nobody will understand. For me, I didn't even want to talk to people about what actually happened in that household. A lot of people didn't know. My family didn't know. A lot of my friends didn't know. They felt like they had an idea something was going on, but the fact that I never came out to say it, I mean, they couldn't do anything. Nobody could do anything because they weren't sure. And that's why it's so important now for women to start speaking up. If you are in those types of situations, you're not alone. There's other people out here that will help. You know, I've had women on my author page reach out to tell their stories, you know, because they finally felt like they had somebody that was going to listen. But there's so many of us out here. You know, there's so many organizations willing to help. But it's just a lot of times, I don't want to say it's our pride, but sometimes for me, I know it was my pride. I was scared to tell people what I was going through because of how they would view me. Because I had this whole idea of what I wanted to do when I grow up and how I wanted to live. And the situation I was in was nothing like what I planned for myself. So to open up and tell somebody, I'm in a domestic violence marriage right now and I need help, was too hard for me to say for those personal reasons. I also didn't even know the signs of a domestic violence relationship. I knew fighting for my life and being scared to go to sleep at night wasn't a healthy relationship, but I didn't know that there was a real name, a term for the type of relationship that I was in. So that's another reason it's important for us to start speaking out so people are more aware. I don't want somebody else to be in a situation and they don't even know the name of it, what they're in. You know, those things aren't healthy. That's not love. Love isn't meant to hurt. That's not what it's meant to do. Love is meant to feel good, you know. I want to say when I left, things got better, but things didn't get better when I left, you know, because I still had healing to do. I still had to find who I was as a person because being in that relationship, I lost who I was. I didn't even know who I was, you know. So I'm trying to grow my children, but at the same time, I still needed to grow. So that was a whole nother experience that I had to deal with. And in my book, because of yesterday, I talk about it. I try to get as open and as honest as I can to speak about what happens in those types of relationships. You know, because I didn't want to sugarcoat nothing. I'm tired of things getting sugarcoated because this is this is important. This is a message that needs to be spread, you know, not just for October and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but throughout the year, because domestic violence don't just happen in October. It happens throughout the year. So that's a little bit of my story. And of course, you can read it all in my book. You know, I talk about my healing process and even other things that I had to go through, even after I left. You know, because I didn't experience rape. You know, that's another part. And it wasn't just a random rape, it was somebody that I knew that I thought maybe we could really have a relationship. But that happens too. A lot of times people get raped by people that they know, you know, and it's still considered rape when you don't consent to it, you know, and it's okay to tell somebody. It's time for us to speak up. We don't have to be silent anymore. So that is my survival story. Just a run through of it because I wrote the whole thing in my book. And you can find information on how to get my book. You can go through Gator House Publishing, which is the publishing company I use. It's on Amazon. It's in the public libraries, you know, because sometimes everybody ain't got the funds to buy a book. I've been there. I get it. So it was important to push my book to be in a library because I wanted to make sure that it was available for everybody. So, thank you.